I want to talk about deconditioning because it is really important in terms of dealing with psychological suffering. What am I talking about when I say deconditioning? I am referring to any type of identification we have or are given regarding this body, this self, this individual sense of self, and how we identify with reality. All of these things I cluster into conventional reality, but to keep things simpler, I'm going to stick to the term conditioning. Conditioning starts perhaps before we are even born into this body, sense of self, and so on. Perhaps we were given a name, we were talked to when we were in the womb, and so on, right? And from the moment we're born, we are given this name. We are told who we are and how to identify in terms of a sense of self. This sense of self becomes tied to our name and how others tell us how we should identify with ourselves and the environment around us. We start to see this ego development as children get older, and this ego development advances to a point where there is a separation from self and other. And we can see this at certain stages of cognitive development. Piaget perhaps documented these things the best. And this sense of individuality continues and builds throughout one's life. And it becomes so present in one's experience that seeing there is much more than this individual sense of self is often crushing. Crushing in the sense that it is just reality breaking. Imagine breaking through a facade or delusion of decades worth of conditioning. This is exactly what we are trying to do in the psychology of awakening. We are trying to show and prove that who we think we are in terms of identification, this ego, this individual sense of self, these are all creations that we have not only been given from the time we were born, but that we have also identified with. Once you make this realization, you start to see how the conditioning started in the first place, from the time you were young to the time that you are at now. Your mind is very, very adept at taking an object and identifying with that object. If you have an individual sense of self, your mind orients itself around this individualized sense. And that is how you navigate your environment, engage in goal-directed activity, and figure out what it is you want to do with your life. Now, we shouldn't be angry at all of those who have made us identify this way, as well as ourselves. We really shouldn't be angry about this because there is utility to thinking this way as well, right? Having this individualized sense of self, navigating the environment in this way, separation of subject and object, me and others, these have evolutionary value, right? In terms of surviving, protecting yourself, all these different things are positively reinforced when we have an individualized sense of self that we feel we need to protect and that we feel we need to harbor and prosper with so that we can grow and navigate the environment in certain kinds of ways. The problem comes when we identify too closely with these constructs, because this sense of self and identifying with reality in those individualized kinds of ways, it is useful in the ways I just talked about, but it is also painful in the sense that we break down reality into certain categories which, quite bluntly, cannot hold true, right? They just flat out are not true, but it seems that way because we have been reinforced for such a long time. I am not claiming that our sense of self is fake, but I am claiming that our sense of self is impermanent. It appears to be one cohesive sense that goes throughout our entire life. But when we really take a hard look, examine within ourselves and through scientific data, we see that this truly cannot be the case. So what I'm recommending here is to consider your own conditioning in the sense that every identification you have with something, every view that you have, every belief that you have, these are all sourced in some type of conditioning. The true gold that comes from awakening, the true freedom, is realizing that what you truly are goes beyond any identification. it comes with the cessation, as the Buddha would probably say. It comes with the cessation of identification or adherence to anything and everything that our mind can identify with. In simpler terms, we are more fundamental in terms of what we truly are. We are more fundamental than what we think we are. That is quite a thought to sit with, because we are so used to being this individualized sense of self. But when you have this actual experience and the delusion of this individualized self that is separate from everything else is broken, you really can't unsee it. And it does come with a certain trade-off, in the sense that if you adhere too far on the other end of the spectrum now, that this individualized sense of self should not be identified with, that it's fake, that it's useless, it's just a trick, you run into problems on the other side as well, because now your sense of purpose, your sense of life, all of these things can be negatively impacted. We need to find a balance between the two, as I have talked about before. But what is most important for this video is acknowledging the conditioning that we all have. Conditioning goes down to psychological mechanisms, social mechanisms, biological mechanisms. All of these different things are at play. And the moment we sit down and really reflect on all of these identifications is when we start to make progressive steps towards awakening.